everyone, this is Sean Orleans welcoming you to a stay-at-home edition of Inside Anarchy.
Anarchy fan. And I know you're probably wondering what I'm doing in the horsepower gym all dressed up. Truth is, I'm getting my arm ready. I mean, who knows? After this is all said and done, I may get that call. We're doing back in Spalding Hall. It's going to be speaking. Now I know right now with the virus going on, we definitely want to make sure that we're safe, and I know we're staying at home and we're staying vigilant. But I also know you guys are missing St. Louis Anarchy. Well, I have now you can visit youtube.com/St. Louis Anarchy today. It's going to be the #1 spot for all Anarchy media. Now you can enjoy exclusive promo vids, behind the scenes event footage, as well as IWTV event highlights and packages and tons of free matches. Some even from talents like Nick Jackson, Chris Hero, Johnny Gargano, and of course all your Anarchy favorites, like Gary J, Besties in the World, and Warhorse.
Who's ready to fucking die?
Now make sure when you go to our YouTube page, not only are you going to subscribe, but you're going to ring that notification bell, so that way you are always up to date with all Anarchy news and media, and you will always be ready for Inside Anarchy. And I will see you.
Joining us at this time is the 3-time Gateway Heritage Champion. He holds the record for most consecutive days as champion, well over 800 days. He's considered the hardest hitter, hardest striker in independent wrestling in the United States. He's been in wars, in Anarchy, and promotions across the country. You've heard me on commentary say, Jesus Christ, Gary, or God damn it, Gary, multiple times, because this man, frankly, does things with his own body or has had things done to him that most people wouldn't be able to get up and walk away from. But he is, for lack of better phrasing, a tough son of a bitch. He's one of my friends. I'd like to welcome Gary J to our little interview setup. Hi, Gary. How are you?
Hi, Sean. How you doing today? I'd like to say thank you for that pretty badass intro.
It's what I do, Gary. It's what I do. It's why they pay me the big bucks. Yeah. How are you doing right now?
Right now, and pretty much put my banner up in my room and talking to you. So I'm not doing too bad, but otherwise, it sucks, man. This whole situation fucking sucks. Totally.
Yep.
It just doesn't affect professional wrestlers. It affects everybody, every industry. People don't have jobs right now. There's no way of income. So, like, ironically, I have no job right now as a professional wrestler. So I got a job down the road at a grocery store.
Okay. Well, I wanted to tell everybody before we started recording here, Gary and I were chatting a little bit, and Gary said, ask about whatever, nothing will be off limits, in ring, out of the ring, personal life, that kind of stuff. So we're going to delve into that. Gary, I wanted to start off with a bit of the origin of Gary J. Where did you, I guess it's cliche with interviews at this point, but where did you get started in wrestling?
I got started in wrestling in 2003. I was hanging out with Matt Jackson, Pierre Abernathy, our Lord and Savior of Anarchy. But basically, we were all best friends, and we all hung out every day in high school. And Peter Townsley, or Pete Tyrock, whatever you want to call him, he was working at the Gravois Grill down in Fenton. And some people came in and said they were starting a wrestling company and handed him a flyer. At this point, I was around 16 or 17, and as soon as I got that in my hands, that's all I thought about. That's all I wanted to do. So we met up with Jordan Lacey, who is a very big part of, I guess you could say, my origin story. He set up their professional wrestling ring in his side yard in a trail park in Burns Mill, and he trained us for a day. And after the day of training, he said, "That's everything I know." And obviously, you can't learn professional wrestling in a day, let alone 8 fucking years.
Right.
So once we realized, this is a little different, and I don't know if this is the right way of being trained, we ended up meeting Adam Raw, Sam Richardson, and Nick Tyson, and then our world changed completely. So that's like an early origin story of how I first stepped into a professional wrestling ring.
So you were trained primarily by Nick Tyson and Adam Raw. What did that entail, the training with them?
Honestly, they had trained a little bit in Gateway Championship Wrestling. And then Nick Tyson was never fully trained, or I don't think he actually stepped in a GCW ring and trained. Sam did. Sam trained for a while and had a couple matches for GCW in the early years. But Nick Tyson, he trained by just watching videotape, writing stuff down, and studying. And if you go back and watch anything Nick Tyson, he was amazing. He used to wear face paint. He used to call himself Nightmare Nick Tyson. And then he got a little more serious with it, took the face paint off, and was just Nick Tyson. But him and Adam Raw would train us every Saturday for about 8 to 10 hours, every Saturday. And then that would entail a lot of cardio. And honestly, I'm going to be frank here, they just beat the shit out of us because they felt like it, especially Adam Raw. And I don't hold that against them because that made me who I am and that gave me a lot of character. But they beat us up for hours and hours and hours at end because they just wanted to see, Adam Raw particularly would tell you now, he just wanted to see us quit and stop. He wanted to see how much we could take. And obviously, a lot of us left. The only 3 left from my class are Matt Jackson, Evan Delistico, and me. So pretty much a lot of cardio, a lot of us getting beat up, learning how to take bumps. But other than that, it was just cardio and getting beat up hours at a time. And then during the week, there was 2 times a week that they would train, but I couldn't do that for a while because I had school.
What does that do to your psyche, essentially voluntarily driving? I'm assuming, where was the ring at this time?
The ring went from a field about 40 minutes away from where I was living in Fenton to a diesel garage that Sam's dad owned, because that's back when he lived with his dad, about 25 minutes away from me. We're in a diesel garage that is no air conditioning, no heat, and then just a ring set up in there. So you add those elements on top of them just wanting to wear us out and see how much we could take. It does a lot to your psyche, because I went in wanting to be Jeff Hardy. I went in thinking, oh, this is going to be easy. Not at all. The reason I'm so tough now and I'm so stubborn and I do stupid things, I think, is because of a lot of those early years. I would just get beat up constantly because I was a small guy, and I still am a small guy. And if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have learned to fight back for myself.
I guess it's maybe serendipitous that it ended up being yourself, Pierre Abernathy, Matt Jackson, and Evan, who ended up being the three who stuck it out, survived the initial run-in with Nick Tyson and Adam Raw. But I'm assuming those two had the same, Evan and Pierre had the same experience as you, getting routinely beat up and worn out by cardio and having to train in a diesel garage, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we would do training to the point where, like, guys were just going outside and throwing up and passing out. And then, you know, they would just be like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And then we just kept showing up and showing up and showing up. And eventually they're like, okay, these guys aren't going to leave. And then after that, you know, we had LWA, and our first characters, obviously, were the European Scumbag, Pierre Abernathy, Gary the Barn Owl, and Evangelistico, which was like a what's the word I'm looking for? Like a church guy, a legit televangelist.
Yeah.
So they were giving us characters because at the time we needed characters because in ring we had no clue what we were doing, and we wouldn't have got over with just wrestling because we didn't know what we were doing. So They gave us these outlandish characters, which I hated. Gary the Barn Owl was first. You listen to any interview I ever talk about, Gary the Barn Owl, I hated. I get it. I wanted to be Jeff Hardy. But obviously that taught me how to work in front of a crowd, and that taught me how to engage with a crowd without even talking. And by the end of it, I loved it. You know, it was a lot of fun.
So 2 follow-ups on that. The 3 of you had the same experience, and you ended up turning out the way you did, where you end up taking far more punishment, I would say, in wrestling, inside of a wrestling ring, than just about anybody. Do you understand somebody who would ask you that, who say, wait, how is it that you became a guy who would routinely bleed or get into a thumbtack match or get into a match with Nick Gage, get thrown into chairs, dive off of things, you know, take the level of abuse that you have?
Ironically, like, I don't know if there's an answer for that. Like, it's not one of those things where I personally, like, when I started and when I was a couple years in, I didn't know what I had. Because if you look at the evolution of Gary the Barn Owl into Gary the Night Owl into Gary J, I don't really pick up any steam or any self-confidence until Gary J kind of happens. Like, in the later years, in the last, let's say, 4 to 5 years, I didn't really know what I had. I didn't know what I was doing. In, like, the last 4 to 5 years, I felt very comfortable with what I've been doing, what I have. Because of, honestly, I take a lot of, like, my personal life and what's going on with me, and I kind of just put that into performance. So there's a lot of times, like, I've been married twice. I've been divorced twice. So there was a lot of times during the first divorce where I was going through a lot and I didn't know how to really comprehend things. So as soon as I got divorced, there was only one thing for me to do. That's wrestle. And I felt so shitty about the situation, and I felt so shitty about how, you know, how could I be divorced? I failed. Like, I'm a piece of shit. So I would go out there and just do stupid shit in the ring, trying to hurt myself and doing dumb things. So it has nothing to really do with my training there. I just think mentally I was in that spot to where I didn't care about my well-being.
Well, so now you've got other questions now that are formulating here. Why were you called the Barn Owl?
Originally, they called me Gary the B.O. because they think I didn't shower. When I was a teenager, I had scruffy hair. I had no facial hair, you know. I just had raggedy clothes. So, like, Gary the B.O. was because I thought I smelled and I didn't shower. So they turned that into Gary the Barn Owl as like a joke, haha.
Okay. Did they eventually tell you why that? Like, when did they let you in on something?
They never did. Someone told me.
Oh. So how many years did you go as Gary the Barn Owl before somebody told you?
I think during the Gary the Barn Owl run, someone told me, and at that point, I didn't care. Because at that point, I think, like, Adam Raw and everybody else, like, they realized that, like, okay, like, that was a dumb thing. Because wrestling back then in 2002 and 2003, that landscape of wrestling and the way people were trained, a lot of things that happened is completely different now compared to like what's going on now in wrestling, obviously.
Yeah.
So like I don't really necessarily think that it was a very malicious thing. That was just something they deemed me, and they're like, oh, here's his nickname, and then they just put a name to it and gave me a character to see what I could do.
Okay. What did your parents think of you wanting to be a wrestler and training and starting out?
I'm gonna kick myself in the ass if I do this. I don't know. I can't even come up with anything.
I don't even need you to read the rest of them.
Oh, fuck me, yes. Nobody likes the D. The guy from Big Dog.
Who's been throwing me on my head? You.
I've spent many a night with your old Nana Shepherd. She is a risk. Talk about with the Zesties robbery. You do squats.
So I would have gone with as well. So I would have got 100 points. Make sure we note that down.
And that doesn't count, though.
700!
The taco is falling apart.
I'll go on the spandex again, Marty. Give me some work.
You get me work. That's your job, Jackson.
It's not my fault you got it wrong, you dumbass.
And that'll do it for this edition of Inside Anarchy. Join us again in 2 weeks as we continue our sit-down interview with Gary J. Remember, you can like, follow, and subscribe to us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We've got some game shows that we're putting together, and you can watch classic matchups from the first run of Anarchy up through the current run. For everyone here at St. Louis Anarchy, this is Sean Orleans. We'll see you next time.
We're done. I gotta get ready. Because if I get the call, it's a thing. I gotta get ready. I'll see you guys at Spalding soon. Bye.